The text I chose was The Case for Reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's worthy of a close read due to its complexity. So there are two things about the text that make it complex. The first aspect is that it consistently changes the point of view of narrative. It starts off as a narrative focusing on Clive Ross, then halfway in the text it then focuses on a historical narrative of going back from when the country was founded all the way to the antebellum period and exploring the history of both slavery and segregation. And it ends on a journalistic note in which it discusses the impact that the financial crisis has had on African American families. So this aspect of shifting historical narrative is one reason why it was really worthy of a close read.
The Case for Reparations. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of racist housing policy. Until we reckon with our compounding moral debts, America will never be whole.
Secondly, as a whole, the text provides a very strong narrative as to the impact that government policies has had on African Americans from the beginning of the nation to current days. And for my unit goals, it's important for students to actually have the historical context to access. The ultimate question that students are grappling with in this unit is whether the Constitution is an instrument of law or an instrument of justice. And in order to get the content knowledge to answer that question rigorously, they need to close read many complex texts where the author is going to maintain a professional distance from the subject and at the same time reveal their point of view towards the subject through their choice of words. So throughout the unit, they're going to be practicing these close reading skills on word choice and author's point of view as they read various texts, whether it's The Case for Reparations or other texts I present them. It also connects to the Common Core social science literacy standards because those two skills of analyzing word choice and picking up on point of view are heavily emphasized when students read nonfiction texts.
So the reason why we learned this word, we're going into our last unit, and ultimately your final essay prompt is going to be this. Is the Constitution an instrument of justice or an instrument of law? And we're going to be studying this idea of a kleptocracy by really doing a close reading of today's text. This class is going to work a little differently than normal. This class is going to work a little differently than normal than when we normally go through a text. Because what we're going to be looking at today, team, is this author's word choice and how the words he uses shows what he thinks about the society people live in and exactly what his view is in regards to a kleptocracy in regards to the text that we are engaging with.
The ultimate goal of the lesson was to bake in the expectation for our kids that you're doing literal and analytical understanding one at a time as you encounter a difficult text. Ultimately, what I want the kids to understand is that when you're reading a complex text, as you read paragraphs and as you read passages, it's like putting on different pairs of glasses, that you read one paragraph for literal understanding so you can understand what's happening in the text. And then once you're done with that, you go back and reread, put on a different pair of glasses, and you reread to understand the analysis, what craft or what techniques is the author using to communicate these points.
So what should we annotate there? What are some of the words that Coates is using to indicate people being stolen from that we should annotate?
And I modeled that in which, for example, the paragraph with the Cadillac, what's going on here first with the horse and buggy and them being farmers, and then after that, why is Coates choosing to use the word Cadillac instead of just saying car? And that ultimately, through that understanding, it sets the kids up to independently read the rest of the text and answer that culminating questions using passages we did not go over in class.
Coates, to me, he just could have compared the buggy to a car. But is he just comparing it to a regular car, or is he comparing it to a Cadillac, team?
Cadillac.
He's doing that on purpose. He's doing that on purpose. It's the difference between saying, you look nice today, versus your hair looks nice today. It's the difference between saying, your shoes are nice, versus your Jordans are nice. He's choosing that word on purpose. So I begin thinking, what is he trying to communicate by comparing it to a Cadillac? What is he trying to say about the horse and buggy? And I think about the money.
The text-dependent questions drive the lesson by giving the kids the evidence that they eventually need to tackle the culminating question. So in this lesson, the culminating question was, how does Coates feel about what happened to the Ross family, and how does his word choice support his feelings? And it took a while to get to that culminating question. I had to reread the text multiple times to really understand what techniques Coates was using to communicate his point of view. And I eventually settled on word choice because he's deliberately using his craft as a writer and choosing very deliberate words that elicit an emotional response from the reader, like robbery, hijacking. These are words with very negative connotations.
Give me a second. Mr. Schwinn, why are we focusing on word choice today? What does the author's choice of words let us know? How the author what? What he's trying to point to, right? So it represents his feelings, right? Why word choice? Because it lets us know the author's what? Feelings. So we're annotating this text, and the reason why, we're going to look at specific words to see how the author feels about the story. In 2 to 3 sentences, please write that down so you have a reference point. So as you work independently, you know exactly what you're looking for. That we're focusing on the author's word choice. So we can figure out how he feels about his subject.
Ultimately, if students are able to pick up on the emotional connotations of those words, they will then be able to tackle that culminating question. So the text-dependent questions had kids really interrogate the author's craft and really interrogate why is he deliberately choosing these words to communicate these ideas. The lesson requires students to defend their answers with evidence by always, when they make an assertion, having a textual basis to back it up. So I set that expectation first by using think, pair, shares during the lesson so students have a chance to interact with each other and share their interpretations of the text and share their annotations. With your partners again, we're going to take 5 minutes to annotate some of these paragraphs, all right, team? So first you need to annotate the subject and stuff, but ultimately we want to figure out and find words that show that the Rosses live in a what team? That the Rosses live in a what team? So just like you did in that second paragraph, you noticed, calm yourself down, just like in that second paragraph when you noticed that Coates used the words hijacked and robbed, right? As you annotate the subject and the topic sentences and supporting details, be on the lookout for words and phrases that show that the Rosses are being what team? That's a noun. Are being what team? Take 5 minutes, go. After that, I would then have the class speak out their answers and their annotations, and then ask the students, hey, where in the text are they looking at to get that answer? Why are they looking at this particular word? What is the interpretation of this word? Do you agree with this interpretation of the word? So ultimately, the goal is that 75% of the discussion in class are kids doing the heavy lifting and really comprehending the text and asking kids to evidence their answers. So for example, if Clyde Ross has an education stolen from him, all right, team, where do we find that? And do we agree or disagree with this interpretation of the text? That forces the kids to do their own heavy lifting, to do most of the cognitive work in the class, and to ultimately build their own enduring understandings rather than me simply telling them what they need to know. I had students demonstrate their understanding of the text through 2 ways. The first way was through the handout that they received with the text. The handout had both the text-dependent questions and the analytical questions, and these served as breadcrumbs for the students. As students answered more of the questions and picked up the breadcrumbs, it would slowly lead them to the culminating question, that by the time they got to the culminating question, they would have both the insight and the evidence to give a very, very rigorous response. So I would often circulate around the room to check on students' progress on that handout, and if I noticed that the class was really struggling with one question, I then knew I could then step in with a check for understanding or a feedback session. The class discussion and the think, pair, shares was the second technique that I chose. Talk is a process, and the more students talk, the more I can get insight into what they're thinking and how prepared they are to respond, and to then schedule those interventions such as, again, check for understandings or feedback sessions.
I got a question. I didn't think C's meant to take away. I thought C's meant to like postpone or to stop something.
Not exactly, because that would be saying I'm seizing this pencil. I'm postponing the pencil. That's cease.
Oh.
Ceasing an action instead of seizing. Any other words or passages or phrases in these paragraphs you read, team, to indicate the Rosses are being stolen from?
Lay on the back.
On the back, let's go, team.
It says they took the cows, hogs, and mules.
Any more evidence? They took the animals away. Hold on. Amanti, you have something?
With this sentence, and so for the upkeep for separate but equal, the entire rostrum would reduce to sharecropping. Would that be considered?
I don't know. You tell me.